She had been planning this day for months, ever since she received the call from her daughter telling her that her grandson had finally made it through the grueling Navy SEAL training. It was a dream come true for the young man, and for her, it was a culmination of years of watching him grow, of supporting him in small ways and large, of quietly cheering him on from the sidelines as he chased something that many people would never even attempt. She wanted this day to be perfect, to show up not just as a proud grandmother, but as a witness to a moment that marked the end of one journey and the beginning of another. Her preparations started days in advance. She carefully considered what she would wear, thinking about how she wanted to look not just for photographs, but for herself. She wanted to feel dignified, presentable, and proud, an image that matched the pride swelling in her heart. She tried on several outfits, finally settling on a navy blue dress that complemented her hair and her eyes. She paired it with a simple necklace, polished shoes, and a small purse. Everything had to feel right because she knew that this was not an ordinary event. This was the moment her grandson's hard work, determination, and sacrifices would be publicly recognized. Traveling to the ceremony was its own adventure. She didn't mind the long drive, 3 hours on the road, because it gave her time to think, to reminisce, and to imagine the smile on her grandson's face when he finally saw her in the crowd. She mentally walked through the entire event, picturing the sequence of events from arriving at the base, finding her seat, and watching the drill instructors march in formation. She thought about the speeches, the salutes, the proud families all around her. For someone who had spent a lifetime quietly supporting her family, this was a rare moment of public acknowledgement, and she wanted to savor every second. Along the way, she reflected on the years that led to this point. She remembered when he was a boy, full of energy, always climbing trees, exploring the woods, and asking endless questions about the world. She remembered the times she had offered guidance, comfort, and encouragement when he faced challenges, though he rarely admitted needing it. She remembered his determination to succeed, even when it seemed impossible, and she marveled at the resilience he had shown over the years. Watching him pursue the path of a Navy SEAL had filled her with both worry and pride. She had worried about the dangers, the physical strain, and the mental challenges, but she had also been proud of his courage, his commitment, and his unwavering focus. On the day of the ceremony, she woke up early, her excitement keeping her from sleeping much the night before. She had a small breakfast, made sure she had everything packed, and double-checked her camera, wanting to capture every moment. The car ride was quiet, mostly filled with music she enjoyed and moments of reflection. She felt a mixture of nerves and anticipation, as though the drive itself was a prelude to the significance of the day. When she arrived at the base, she noticed the precision and discipline that filled the air. Families were finding their seats, saluting, taking photos, and quietly whispering to one another. The smell of polished uniforms, the crisp air, and the sound of marching drills created a sense of occasion she had never experienced before. She found her seat, carefully arranged her things, and settled in, feeling a swell of pride every time she caught a glimpse of her grandson practicing his formations and standing tall among his fellow graduates. As she waited for the ceremony to begin, she thought about what this moment represented. It was more than just a graduation. It was recognition of years of effort, a symbol of commitment, and a milestone that validated all the struggles and sacrifices he had endured. She was acutely aware of the honor it was to witness this event firsthand, to be physically present in a space where courage, discipline, and resilience were on full display. Every sense was heightened, the sights, the sounds, the energy in the air, and she felt a deep connection not only to her grandson, but to the larger community of families and service members who had made similar sacrifices. She glanced around at the other families, noticing the excitement and pride mirrored in their expressions. Mothers, fathers, siblings, and grandparents all gathered with a shared purpose, to celebrate the accomplishments of those who had endured one of the toughest challenges imaginable. For her, this connection added to the gravity of the moment. She wasn't just observing her grandson's success. She was part of a collective experience, a tapestry of emotions, stories, and histories converging in one place for one purpose: to honor those who had earned the right to stand as Navy SEALs. The crowd began to hush as the ceremony was about to start, and she felt her heartbeat quicken in anticipation. She adjusted her posture, smoothed her dress, and held her camera ready, eager to capture the first glimpse of her grandson as he marched into the ceremony, a young man transformed by months of intense training, discipline, and endurance. Every detail of the day, the preparation, the drive, the reflection, had led to this moment, and she felt a mixture of pride, joy, and anticipation as she waited to witness the culmination of his remarkable journey. She sat in her seat, her hands folded neatly in her lap, taking a deep breath as she tried to calm the fluttering in her chest. Pride bubbled inside her like a quiet fire, steady but impossible to ignore. She wasn't just another face in the crowd. She was there for him, her grandson, who had pushed himself further than anyone could imagine. Every time she thought of the challenges he had faced, every grueling hour of training, every physical test that would have broken someone with less determination, she felt a surge of admiration. She wanted him to know, even from the distance of several rows in the audience, that she saw every ounce of effort he had poured into this achievement, that she was celebrating not just the final moment, but the entire journey that had led him here. Her eyes scanned the crowd, taking in the other family members, some who looked equally proud, others nervously fidgeting as they prepared to watch their loved ones cross a milestone that demanded more than most could endure. She noticed the young women and men in uniform, standing at attention, their faces solemn and focused, each carrying the weight of months of exhausting drills, endless repetitions, and mental challenges that would have tested even the strongest. She thought about how much had changed for him since he first set foot on this path, how far he had come, and how much of himself he had poured into this accomplishment. She felt a lump rise in her throat, a combination of joy and emotion that threatened to spill over. This was a proud moment, yes, but it was also a deeply human one. It was the recognition of years of hard work, of dedication, and of sacrifice. She thought about the long nights he had spent studying tactics, the early mornings he had endured running and training before the sun was up, and the countless moments when he could have given up but didn't. Each memory intensified her sense of pride, and she found herself smiling, quietly cheering in her own way, willing her excitement to radiate without disrupting the solemnity of the event. As she watched, she remembered how he had always approached challenges in life with a mix of curiosity, stubbornness, and determination. From a young age, he had refused to shy away from difficult tasks, always eager to prove to himself what he could endure. She thought back to the times he had fallen and gotten back up, the scraped knees, the bruised elbows, the moments when he could have chosen comfort but chose perseverance instead. That same spirit had carried him through Navy SEAL training, and now she was seeing the payoff of years of character development, grit, and relentless determination. She could feel the energy in the air shifting as the ceremony progressed. The precision of the drills, the synchronized movements, and the disciplined conduct of the graduates created a sense of awe and admiration. Every time her grandson stepped into formation, she felt a rush of pride that made her chest tighten. She noticed the small details, the way he carried himself, the way he saluted, the confidence in his stance, and she marveled at how someone she had once watched run through the backyard now stood as a symbol of courage and achievement. She clutched her camera tightly, wanting to capture every moment, every expression, and every detail, but she also realized that some memories were meant to be held in the heart, not just in photographs. The ceremony was a tapestry of emotions, a mixture of anticipation, excitement, and solemn respect. She absorbed everything: the sounds of the marching, the quiet conversations of the families, the proud smiles and occasional tears, and the disciplined rhythm of the graduates, all of it combining into a moment that felt larger than life, yet deeply personal because it centered on her grandson's accomplishment. Her mind wandered briefly to the sacrifices that had made this moment possible. She thought about the conversations she had shared with him over the years, offering advice, encouragement, and sometimes stern guidance. She remembered the moments when he had confided in her, sharing doubts or fears, and she had listened, silently supporting him while trusting that he would find his own way. She realized that her pride wasn't just in the physical achievement, the uniform, or the ceremony itself. It was in the person he had become, the young man who had faced obstacles, endured hardships, and emerged stronger, disciplined, and focused. The crowd around her shifted slightly as the ceremony continued, families exchanging whispered congratulations and anticipatory smiles. She felt a sense of unity with them, a shared recognition that this day was a celebration of resilience, courage, and dedication. Her own sense of pride deepened as she considered the weight of the accomplishment, the extraordinary effort it took to reach this stage, and the personal growth her grandson had demonstrated. Each passing moment of the ceremony seemed to reinforce the significance of what he had achieved, and she felt a powerful connection to both him and the broader community of families witnessing this event, all of them bound by pride, hope, and admiration for the graduate standing before them. She adjusted her posture slightly, smoothing the folds of her dress, and took a slow, steadying breath. She was fully present in this moment, aware of every sound, sight, and feeling, absorbing it all with the quiet intensity of someone who had waited a long time for this day. Pride coursed through her veins, and she felt it in every fiber of her being, a quiet, unshakable pride that made her chest swell and her heart beat a little faster with every step her grandson took, every salute he gave, and every disciplined movement that reminded her of the extraordinary journey that had brought him to this point. The moment it happened, she didn't notice at first. She was focused entirely on her grandson, on the rows of graduates standing perfectly in formation, on the precision of their movements, and on the hum of pride and anticipation that filled the air. She felt a sense of connection to the young men and women before her, knowing the sacrifices each had made to reach this point. But then, a subtle shift in the energy around her caught her attention. She sensed eyes turning, whispers stirring, and a brief pause in the ceremony that made her stomach tighten. It wasn't until she followed the glances that she realized the cause. The commander had noticed something about her. She tried to follow his gaze, confused, until she caught sight of her own arm. The tattoo she had carried for decades, a piece of her own story inked into her skin, was now fully visible. It was a design she had chosen long ago, a reminder of her past, a symbol of her independence, her experiences, and a life lived fully and unapologetically. She had never thought it would attract attention in a setting like this, in a moment that was supposed to be solely about her grandson. For a brief instant, she felt the weight of scrutiny. The commander's expression had frozen, his focus fixed on her in a way that made her pulse quicken. Around her, the ceremony seemed to hang in suspended animation, as though everyone had felt the ripple of that unexpected recognition. She could see other attendees glance in the same direction, their curiosity mirrored in their faces. The tattoo, once a private symbol, had suddenly become a public statement, and she realized that this ordinary act of being present had somehow turned into something extraordinary. Her mind raced through a lifetime of experiences that had led her to this point. She thought about why she had gotten the tattoo in the first place, the story it told, the people it honored, the moments of rebellion and bravery it commemorated. It had been her way of claiming a piece of herself in a world that often tried to dictate conformity, a way to hold on to memories and identities that were meaningful to her. She had never imagined it would intersect with the disciplined world of the military, where uniforms and regulations created an image of precision and order. And yet, here it was, a stark contrast to the controlled, orderly environment of the ceremony, drawing attention in a way that neither she nor anyone else had anticipated. She felt a rush of emotions, pride, anxiety, and a quiet amusement all mixed together. Pride, because she realized that her grandson's achievements had placed her in a spotlight she would never have sought for herself. Anxiety, because she sensed the tension that the commander's gaze had introduced into what should have been a purely celebratory event. And amusement, because she couldn't help but see the irony in the situation. She had spent so many years moving quietly through the world, her tattoo a private story, and now it had become a moment of public intrigue, at the very event she had been dreaming about attending. As she tried to steady herself, she noticed the subtle ways in which the commander's body language had changed. He had stopped mid-gesture, his eyes locked on her arm, a look of uncertainty or surprise crossing his face. She could feel the stillness of the room press in around her, a pause in the rhythm of the ceremony that made every second stretch longer than it should have. It was as if time itself had slowed, forcing her to confront the unexpected consequences of being fully visible in a world that demanded order and discipline. The tattoo itself carried a complexity that matched the moment. To her, it was more than just ink on skin. It was a narrative, a symbol of experiences, of lessons learned, of choices made, and of courage in her own life. It spoke of a story that predated her grandson's achievement, a story that intersected with it now in a way that neither she nor anyone else could have predicted. She could see the curiosity of those around her, the tension in the room, and the subtle adjustments of those who were aware of the unusual pause in the proceedings. She tried to keep her composure, holding herself upright, her hands resting calmly on her lap, while inside, her thoughts raced. She considered the contrast between the rigid discipline of the military and the personal freedom symbolized by her tattoo. She thought about how, for her grandson, this ceremony represented a culmination of strict rules, intense training, and unyielding structure. For her, it represented an intrusion of the personal into the professional, a reminder that individual stories often intersect with institutional expectations in ways that are unpredictable, sometimes startling, and occasionally transformative. Her gaze flicked back to her grandson, who stood unaware of the ripple she had caused, proud and focused, embodying everything she had always hoped he would become. She felt a mixture of relief and continued anticipation, knowing that the story of her presence, the tattoo, and the commander's reaction was now part of the larger narrative of the day. She realized that this single moment, this pause, held significance far beyond what anyone might have expected, a moment where personal history collided with institutional ceremony, creating a tension that was both delicate and profound. The unexpected pause in the ceremony created a ripple through the crowd, subtle at first, but growing more noticeable with each passing second. The commander, still frozen, seemed to be weighing something in his mind, his gaze locked on the tattoo that had suddenly made the grandmother the center of attention. People shifted in their seats, some craning their necks to see what had caused the unusual interruption, while others whispered softly to the person next to them, curiosity and uncertainty mingling in the air. For the grandmother, it was a moment of suspended reality, where the familiar pride and joy of the ceremony collided with an unanticipated tension that left her feeling suddenly hyper-aware of every detail around her. She tried to steady her breathing, keeping her posture straight and her hands resting neatly on her lap. Her heart was racing, a mix of excitement, nervousness, and the thrill of being noticed in a setting where she had never expected to stand out. She reminded herself that this day was about her grandson, about celebrating his hard-earned achievement as a Navy SEAL, and yet here she was, caught in the gaze of authority, her personal story inadvertently thrust into the spotlight. The juxtaposition of pride and tension was unlike anything she had experienced before, and she felt every second stretching longer than it should, each one weighted with anticipation. Around her, she could sense the subtle shifts in the atmosphere. The graduates remained disciplined, their attention unwavering, but even they seemed to sense the unusual pause. Drill instructors whispered quietly among themselves, a small ripple of movement traveling down the rows. Families glanced around, curiosity flickering across their faces as they tried to understand what had caused the sudden interruption. In the middle of this, the grandmother felt a strange combination of exposure and empowerment. The tattoo, which had always been a private piece of her identity, was now a focal point in a highly structured environment that demanded conformity and respect. Her mind raced as she reflected on what might be going through the commander's head. Was he judging her? Was he questioning her presence? Or was he simply surprised, unprepared for this personal symbol entering such a rigid, controlled space? She didn't know, and yet she could feel the weight of his attention pressing down in a way that made the air seem heavier. She straightened her shoulders, reminding herself of her own strength, the life she had lived, and the lessons she had learned along the way. She had faced difficult moments before, moments that required resilience, courage, and patience, and she knew she could navigate this one as well. The tattoo itself seemed to take on a life of its own in that moment. Its colors, shapes, and symbolism, once just a personal expression, now spoke to the crowd, to the commander, and perhaps even to her grandson in a subtle, unspoken way. It was a symbol of experience, of history, of choices made and challenges overcome. She realized that it represented more than just herself. It was a visual testament to the idea that life is rarely orderly, that personal narratives often intersect with formal structures in unpredictable ways, and that moments of disruption can carry meaning far beyond what anyone expects. She caught a glimpse of her grandson, standing tall and focused, unaware of the stir that had been created in the audience. Pride swelled in her chest again, sharper and more intense because of the tension that now framed it. She understood that this moment, though unexpected, added depth to the day's significance. It wasn't just a ceremony celebrating physical endurance and discipline. It was also a reminder that human stories, messy, personal, and unique, can intersect with structured institutions in ways that challenge assumptions and provoke thought. She felt the subtle awareness of everyone around her, sensing the curiosity, the whispered speculations, and the heightened attention. It was a strange sensation to feel seen in such a focused way, especially in a setting where everyone was supposed to blend into their assigned roles. And yet, despite the unease, there was a quiet pride in the realization that the tattoo, her story, and her presence had created a moment of acknowledgement that transcended the ordinary. She felt the irony of it, the unexpected collision of personal history and formal ceremony, and a small, private smile crept across her face, though she tried to keep her composure intact. Time seemed to slow as the pause continued, each second stretching longer in the heightened awareness that the situation demanded. She could feel her own heartbeat, steady yet amplified by anticipation, and she realized that the tension itself was teaching her something about patience, resilience, and the power of presence. Every detail, the hum of whispered conversations, the subtle shifts of the graduates, the commanding attention of the officers, became magnified in her perception, drawing her deeper into the moment and sharpening her awareness of the unexpected dynamics at play. She straightened once more, lifting her chin slightly, and allowed herself to feel the quiet thrill of being noticed in such a profound way. The tension, though unexpected, was also a recognition, an acknowledgement of the life she had lived, the choices she had made, and the presence she carried. In that suspended moment, she understood that the story unfolding was no longer just about her grandson's achievement. It had become something larger, a confluence of pride, personal history, and the unpredictable human element that can disrupt even the most disciplined of ceremonies. The tattoo on her arm was more than just ink. It was a story, a statement, and a piece of her history that few people had seen up close. Over the years, it had become a symbol of experiences she carried with her quietly, a visual representation of moments that had shaped her life. Each line, each color, each intricate detail told a part of a narrative she had lived, moments of joy, defiance, struggle, and courage woven into something permanent on her skin. She had never imagined that this piece of herself would one day intersect with the world of the military, or that it would draw the gaze of a commander during a ceremony meant to celebrate her grandson's accomplishments. She thought back to the day she got the tattoo, decades earlier, when she had made a choice to express herself in a way that felt authentic and personal. At the time, it had been a small act of rebellion, a way to claim ownership of her body and her story, to mark a chapter of her life that was important to her. The tattoo had witnessed the passing of years, traveled with her through countless experiences, and remained a private emblem of identity and memory. Now, sitting in that crowded ceremony, she felt its presence in a new and unexpected way. It had transformed from a personal memento into a focal point of attention, and with that transformation came a weight of significance she had never anticipated. As the commander's gaze remained fixed, she could feel the tension in the room growing. She noticed the subtle shifts of the people around her, quiet whispers, sideways glances, and the occasional gasp, each one amplifying the sense of anticipation. The tattoo had become a conversation without words, a silent message that conveyed history, experience, and identity all at once. She could almost feel it speaking on her behalf, telling a story that had nothing to do with the ceremony itself, yet somehow intertwined with the moment in a way that demanded acknowledgement. Her mind raced through the memories attached to the tattoo. She remembered the challenges she had faced, the obstacles she had overcome, and the moments of courage that had defined her life. Each element of the design held significance, a symbol of perseverance, a mark of love and loss, a reminder of times when she had stood firm despite uncertainty or fear. She realized that in this moment, the tattoo was more than decoration. It was a testament to resilience, a visual representation of the strength she had carried through the years, and a reminder that personal history often intersects with public moments in ways that are profound and unexpected. She could sense that the commander was grappling with more than just the image before him. There was a pause in his demeanor, a flicker of recognition, perhaps even a hint of respect, as if he were realizing that the woman in the audience carried a depth and history that went far beyond the confines of the ceremony. The tattoo had sparked a moment of reflection, a subtle acknowledgement of experience, individuality, and courage. It was an interruption, yes, but also a revelation, reminding everyone present that the personal and the institutional often collide in ways that are unforeseen but meaningful. Around her, the crowd remained mostly still, their curiosity tempered by the formal expectations of the ceremony. Some families leaned slightly forward, trying to see more clearly, while others whispered quietly to each other, speculating about what had caused the sudden focus on a grandmother in the audience. In the midst of this, she felt a quiet, almost surreal awareness of being part of something larger than herself, a moment where her personal narrative intersected with the disciplined world of the military in a way that no one could have predicted. She caught a glimpse of her grandson again, standing tall, disciplined, and focused, unaware of the stir his grandmother's presence had caused. Pride surged through her chest, tempered by a strange mixture of nervousness and exhilaration. The tattoo had transformed her from a spectator into a participant in a different kind of recognition, one that wasn't earned through physical endurance or drills, but through a life lived fully, authentically, and with courage. She felt a sense of validation, not just for herself, but for all the moments that the tattoo represented, the quiet acts of bravery, perseverance, and integrity that had defined her life. As she adjusted her posture slightly, she realized that the tattoo had changed the atmosphere of the ceremony, even if only for a brief moment. It was a reminder that identity is multifaceted, that personal history carries weight, and that moments of unexpected attention can reveal deeper truths about who we are and the paths we have walked. She could feel the room holding its breath, caught between the formality of the ceremony and the human story unfolding in plain sight. She reflected on how the tattoo connected generations. Her grandson, the object of her pride, was about to graduate as a Navy SEAL, a symbol of discipline, courage, and achievement. And yet here she was, a grandmother with a personal history etched into her skin, showing that bravery and individuality come in many forms. The tattoo had reminded everyone present that courage is not only measured in physical feats or rigorous training, but also in the choices, experiences, and life lived authentically. In that moment, the atmosphere shifted in a way that was almost tangible. The focus of the room, once solely on the graduates and the ceremonial proceedings, had subtly expanded to include her presence, and the story that her tattoo silently told. There was a quiet recognition in the air, a sense that something unexpected had happened, something that transcended the formal structure of the event. The pause, the frozen gaze of the commander, and the curious glances of those around her transformed a routine graduation ceremony into a moment layered with meaning, a reminder that human experience often intrudes on even the most disciplined and orderly settings. She felt a mixture of pride, humility, and exhilaration as she realized that the attention was not entirely negative. The commander's frozen expression, initially intimidating, now seemed to carry a hint of acknowledgement. It was as though he had recognized something in her that demanded respect, a life lived boldly, choices made courageously, and an authenticity that could not be ignored. The room itself seemed to hold a collective breath, an unspoken understanding that her presence and her story added a new dimension to the ceremony, a subtle but undeniable shift in focus that emphasized the human element within a highly regimented environment. Her gaze drifted to her grandson again, and she felt an even deeper sense of pride. He was unaware of the stir his grandmother had caused, but she knew that in some way, the intersection of their lives at this moment amplified the significance of his achievement. His discipline, his strength, and his courage were on full display, but so too was the legacy of the family that had supported him, nurtured him, and instilled values that had guided him to this point. She felt that her tattoo, a symbol of her own experiences, had become an unexpected bridge between generations, a visual representation of the continuity of courage, resilience, and individuality that ran through their family. The tension in the room began to ease gradually, replaced by a subtle energy of admiration and reflection. The ceremony continued, but there was now a different kind of awareness among the attendees. People shifted in their seats, their attention flicking between the graduates and the grandmother whose story had briefly interrupted the proceedings. In that brief interruption, the boundaries between personal history and institutional recognition had blurred, revealing a truth that was both simple and profound. Courage and respect are not limited to uniforms, drills, or formal achievement. They are also found in the choices we make, the lives we lead, and the stories we carry with us. She felt a quiet empowerment, a realization that her presence had mattered in a way she had not anticipated. The tattoo, once a private symbol of her past, had become a catalyst for recognition, subtly altering the dynamics of the ceremony without disrupting its purpose. She understood that respect is often earned not just through formal accolades or achievements, but through authenticity, courage, and the willingness to exist fully in one's own truth. In this sense, her quiet act of showing up, fully herself, had created a moment that resonated far beyond the visual impact of the tattoo itself. Her thoughts wandered to the broader significance of what had just happened. Life is unpredictable, she reflected, and sometimes the moments that matter most are the ones that arise unexpectedly, that challenge expectations, or that force us to confront the intersection of personal history and public recognition. The ceremony had been planned down to the minute, yet a single element, her tattoo, had introduced a pause that carried meaning, a reminder that human stories are layered, complex, and often inseparable from the milestones we celebrate. She glanced around the audience and noticed the subtle expressions of respect and curiosity on the faces of those nearby. It was a reminder that recognition and admiration do not always follow the expected path. Sometimes, they arrive quietly, sparked by something unexpected, a reminder that our personal stories, our histories, choices, and experiences carry weight and can influence others in ways we cannot predict. She felt the enormity of that realization, the quiet power of presence, and the affirmation that her life and her story mattered, even in a setting that was not designed to acknowledge her. The grandmother's heart swelled with pride once more as she observed the graduates. They were the focus, of course, the culmination of rigorous training, discipline, and courage. Yet in that moment, the lesson of the day expanded. Respect and admiration can be multifaceted, arising from achievements, personal histories, and the authenticity of individuals who show up fully as themselves. She felt a connection to everyone in the room, the families, the graduates, the officers, realizing that shared human experience, acknowledgement, and appreciation for courage in all its forms were what truly gave the day its depth. She reflected quietly on the journey that had brought her here, the long drive, the anticipation, the memories of her grandson growing up, the sacrifices and hard work that had led to this day. All of it had converged in this single moment, enhanced unexpectedly by the visibility of her tattoo, a reminder that life has a way of layering meaning upon meaning. She felt a profound sense of fulfillment, a recognition that the ceremony, while celebrating one generation, had also illuminated the value of the previous one, the importance of presence, and the enduring impact of lived experience.